So when did the power come back on?
Power came back on, I think Thursday night, if I remember correctly, something like that. So it's been back on for a couple days now.
How long did it go on for?
I think I was out for, if it was Thursday, I guess 3 days more or less. There was a brief period, I think Wednesday, where it came back on like in the morning, and then I went to do something else and came back and it was off again. So yeah.
Damn. It didn't get fully apocalyptic.
No, and it's also weird because I found out later that the reason why the power went out was apparently the power company decided, because I guess there were like potentially like some really intense storms coming that I don't think ever came, but like the humidity was like wild, and I guess allegedly that was like overloading like the electricity system to the point where like the power company was just like, yeah, we're just gonna like shut off like blocks the city's power to like compensate.
Oh man, it's boom times in America.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody, to System of Systems, the audio misinformation arm, the Safety Propaganda Counterintelligence Network, and these are your hosts, Adam Lehrer
and Will Sampson.
And we got a guest here with us tonight, artist from here in New York, Mr. Will Sheldon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So where are you holed up right now?
I'm in the East Village on 6th Street.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been here for like 5 or 6 years. 6 years.
That's a great spot.
Yeah.
I used to live on 12th and 2nd Avenue, across the street from the movie theater.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That amazing movie theater. Yeah.
Yeah, that with the red velvet seating and all that shit.
I love it. Yeah. It's like one of my favorite movie theaters.
So that's where your studio is?
My studio is actually Lower East Side, Chinatown area. Like it's Grand and Eldridge. Yeah.
Close to, but not quite part of the oft written about these days Dime Square, but
yeah, it's pretty close.
Within the vicinity.
Where I mean, it's definitely in the vicinity. I definitely find myself there every once in a while if I'm like picking up some food or like doing something like that. But yeah,
it's unavoidable.
Yeah,
I was there last night.
There.
Yeah, I was actually at Montez Press last night. What was the name of that band, Beanstalk?
Extreme Animals.
Extreme Animals. Do you know them?
No, what's that?
I didn't know it either, but it's like this like insane, noisy and loud like glitch pop group or something, but it kind of like bangs and you can like mosh dance to it, and there's like a video element. It was actually really good, I thought.
Cool. Where are they from?
They're from here, right?
They're from Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Cool.
Yeah, Providence. That makes sense. I used to hang out over there. Where did you go to school, Will?
I went to school at SVA. Yeah.
That's cool. What year did you graduate? And when? All right, let's back up real quick. All right. So you went to art school, right, at SVA?
Yeah.
Did the tattoos, were you already interested in doing them, or did you start kind of applying them while you're at school studying painting and such?
It was, I started so basically first year at SVA was kind of just like living in the city, partying my ass off, and had a job at a restaurant in the East Village, and I was in a band, and I was pretty sure that was what I would do with my life, is just play music, actually. And I was like,
what band were you in?
This band called Liquor Store.
Oh shit, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah,
do you talk about that much publicly?
Yeah. They're like all people that I went to high school with, and they were like they're really good friends still. And you know, it was just like, it was one of those things where I went to school, we all are from Jersey, and like, you know, they would always come in, and we all had like in New Jersey, you could get tattooed at any age as long as you had parental consent. So basically I found out if got your parents to sign off one time, you could keep on going back.
Oh,
And
man.
so in high school, we were like getting covered in like ridiculous tattoos. Like,
Dude, I can't even imagine what I would have put on my body.
yeah, it
when I
was just like
like
every week
15.
someone would have something different. We're like, it was insane. And we all worked at like pizza places, made cash, had enough money. I remember my first tattoo was funded because I saved up money to buy my then girlfriend a birthday present, and she broke up with me the week before. And so I like ended up getting a tattoo. But this is when I was 17, probably.
What was the first
Um,
one?
It was a Will Smith tattoo based off of his album Millennium.
That is so sick.
And the way the actual, it's funny because I was gonna tell you this, but you posted that book, The Rape of Nanking.
Yeah. Yeah, that book is nuts.
It's nuts. And I did a report on that in high school, and my dad was so psyched on it that that's why he signed off on me getting a tattoo, actually.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Like this kid knows some things, you know. You can
He was just
right.
like psyched that I like asserted myself in some way in high school, which I wasn't really that good at doing for the most part. And I was always trying to drop out for some reason. And I did a good job on this report that happened to be on that book that you posted. It was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so basically I was deemed like since I drew a lot, like I was deemed the tattoo artist of the crew. Like basically everyone was paying for tattoos, and they thought like eventually you'll just become the tattoo artist. And so I thought I would be in a band and do tattoos to make money, because I also knew that I wouldn't probably make a lot of like enough money from going on these tours that I was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I dropped out of art school, my second year, and worked at a restaurant and just kind of like put my head down and pushed my way into tattooing, and like got a lot of tattoos, and tried to learn as much as I could about it. And I was just kind of like obsessed, and so I did that. And then I eventually found myself, after tattooing in my apartment, all of my friends from school and like people in the music scene that I was in, found that I was tattooing at a shop in Jersey City, doing walk-ins.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel as stimulated as I wanted to. And so I ended up going back to school, but I then had a full-time job as a tattooer, which was made me feel better about stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, one observation I've made about you as a figure is like, to the extent that there are people who operate like doing, you know, full-time tattoo work and have presences in the art world, typically there's like a clear delineation between someone who's like, I make tattoos, you know, which is fun and cool, and then like their work. And then there's also examples where guys are like way too referential of like tattoo stuff in their artwork.
Mm-hmm.
But you have found this sort of interesting balance where you seem to develop like a visual language in your work, and then the tattoos, you're sort of like finding ways to fit this iconography into tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious if you see these as like outgrowths, essentially like two components of one practice, or you do have a separation between them.
Yeah, I think both. I do think that there's a separation. I do think that they're also somewhat one project. And like, I guess it's always this thing where like at one point the tattoos start to make more sense, and then at another point the artwork seems to make more sense, but they are, they are two different things. One is like my job, the way that I've made money the last 11 years. And the other one is this thing that I just have found that I kind of do the rest of the time that I'm not doing that.
Right.
And I think that there's just this like inevitable crossover, and that just happens,
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because like when people get a tattoo by you, they definitely seem to be like they're committing to a very specific imagery.
Yeah.
It's not like they're just going to the shop where they can get like the perfect eagle or whatever. It's like they're wanting something by you. Does that, I don't know, that sort of seems like it would feel kind of powerful to have people enthusiastic about basically like branding themselves with your ideas. Like this, like the control freak part of my brain is like really drawn to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like it is really cool. And I guess I don't really like think about it all too much, like I don't want to sound too like wishy-washy or anything, but I guess like, I mean, I've never really thought of my tattoos as like my own thing necessarily. Like I always like, I'm like, I actually am just doing these more or less regular, this just kind of like normal iconography that like passes through all cultures and all like, all like flowers and skulls and mushrooms and holidays and like and I kind of have just done it enough where I think that my own hand has gotten into it.
Right.
And it is, I think, like from stuff that I grew up with, and that we all grew up with, and a lot of people grew up with. And it's like it's hard to not have these things as you grow up stick in your mind somewhere and then like kind of come out in other ways. And I think people are drawn to that. So I can't claim it necessarily. I think that it's like this just like, I don't know, like we're all
channeling.
Yeah, it's like, it's basically, I think of it as it's just being able to channel something and give people maybe what I would want or want to see, or something like that.
Yeah, it is kind of amazing because I also think what's really impressive, and then we can get off tattoo stuff, but like what's really impressive is that like when you do kink the language of tattoo, like the actual like visual lexicon of tattooing it, there's a lot of room for error. But your tattoos always look fucking really good. Like they look like great tattoos, which I think is like the hardest part about it, to make something like specific and interesting and unique that still totally works as like a tattoo.
Yeah. I have, yeah. I mean, it's something that's important to me. And it's like, when I first started tattooing, I really was focused on being like good at doing it because I was working at all of these street shops and I mainly was just doing things that people wanted as they walked in, and they didn't care about who I was because why would they? Because I was 20 years old and like, like they just like, and I would be like thinking about, like, I'm like, well, I go to art school, I know how to draw. And people would just be like, I just want like, my name, or I want my girlfriend or boyfriend or name or something. And like, so eventually I kind of was just like, oh, I need to be able to do this so I can sleep at night, and then eventually it became clear that I would be able to figure out how to draw the way that I wanted to draw as a tattoo or something, and make it work, make it readable. Yeah.
Well, the aspect of tattoos that I've always really liked, because there are times like that I'll be like, maybe I shouldn't have like ruined myself with all these tattoos,
yeah, of course.
like whiffs of that thought or whatever.
Yeah,
but the part of it that I like is that it kind of makes you like more, it's a lens of like seeing the world. So it in a way kind of makes you worldly. Like if I go travel somewhere, you were like, oh, we should get a tattoo like as a souvenir, and you end up having a conversation. Like it becomes an interesting way to travel, move around. And I've always liked the little mini micro culture in it.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, there's this like Mike Malone interview where he talks about how tattoos have made his life easier.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why that like makes sense to me, but I've like definitely been in like the back of a car in the Jersey Shore where all of the police are like completely roided out and like young and crazy, and we pulled over with like drugs on us, and we're screwed, and they like look at my tattoos and they're like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about getting a tattoo, you guys get out of here, you know?
Yeah, that's so true.
Like, everyone's like, I can't believe your tattoos just like got us out of being in, jail.
Yeah, it's so nuts that you see street cops today with like insane sleeves and like neck pieces and shit, you know? It's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Will, do you have any tattoos?
Nah, I've never been a tattoo guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. The first couple that I got were like totally garbage. They're both even like I have these like black flag bars that I don't really like anymore either, just because they don't make sense in the context of all the other ones.
Yeah.
But my first two were just like horrible. Like always, and it's the worst. People be like, what the thing you want with a tattoo is you want people to be like, oh, that's interesting, or like, oh, cool eagle. You don't want them to be like, what the fuck is that? You know?
Yeah, you don't want people to ask too many questions.
Exactly, because then it just becomes like an embarrassing like conversation piece.
Yeah, it always like, oh, I don't know what happened there. It just happened.
Yeah, I have a buddy who has a tattoo like that. Like he got drunk on like a road trip. I think they were in Florida or maybe like in New Orleans when he got this, but he got like a giant like palm tree tattoo on his fucking forearm, and it just looks retarded. Man.
Forearm too.
Yeah, he was thrashed apparently, but it's really funny.
Dude, I don't know if you would agree with this, Will, but like anytime, because people like if you have a lot of tattoos, people are like they tell you, they tell you about their ambitions of tattoos or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And like you can tell when someone's like really overthinking it. Like it has to be this like meaningful symbol of a dream that I had or whatever. And you just want to be like, dude, I'll always just be like, no, just get an eagle. Just get a fucking eagle. Like you won't regret it. It'll look cool. And like,
Yeah, get like some sort of like symbol that just is nobody will question.
Yeah. Like, oh, that's a cool eagle tattoo,
Yeah, and that's it. That's the less that can be said about something, and I think the more powerful it can be somehow.
Yeah.
In tattoo.
Will, one other thing I wanted to ask you about is especially in your more recent series of work, you seem to have this, you seem to like sort of obsessively chase an idea, and then render it in some sort of like hyper vivid, unique way. The most recent one that I checked out was you were saying in Otra magazine or something where I used to write for.
Cool.
Yeah, like way back in the day. I don't think they'd have me anymore, to be honest. But you were into Hans Bellmer, which I love his work too. But then you got really into these like dolls that you found on some website. Just talking about that series a little bit and how dolls became the thing.
Well, it's a lot of different things happened in my life that all pointed to making these dolls. And one of them was, I specifically remember reading this short story in this A.M. Holmes book of a group of short stories called Safety of Objects, called A Real Doll. And it's basically about an older brother that becomes obsessed with his younger sister's Barbie doll and starts dating the Barbie doll and has this surreal relationship throughout the story with this Barbie doll. It ends up getting married, they have sex, and then like there's like another Ken Barbie doll that gets involved and it gets messy. And I was watching this interview with A.M. Holmes talking about it, where she was talking about how she bought a Barbie doll and put it on her mantle. And whenever people came over to her house, they would inevitably go up to the doll and take it off the mantle and start talking about their relationship with a doll. And everyone sort of had one. And they would also, without thinking about it, they would try to like hurt the doll, like pull it apart or like stick something in it or like, and so that like was fascinating to me. And again, Hans Bellmer is like, I love the work and it really, that really resonates with me. And I've always kind of tried to figure out how to incorporate it somehow into my work. And even in the tattoos that I was doing a while ago, I was doing all of these tattoos of like flowers and weapons and all of this stuff, but I would make it into dolls. I would just put stitching on it and it would inevitably make them a doll. And these things that can like fall apart, that were hollow, that you could like project into. And then I was reading this Joy Williams book where the first paragraph of the book talks about how when we are born, we're basically dolls. And we're these empty vessels that then our communities and our parents and our society kind of put stuff into us.
Yeah.
And we then become people, like after we're these like empty sort of vessels. And I, in my work, was making a lot of landscapes with no people in them, no figures at all.
Yeah.
And I was like kind of recreating these old European turn of the century landscape paintings, but taking the people out of them. And then when I was thinking maybe I wanted to put people back into them, I found this website that is like a wholesale website that sells the type of doll that Hans Bellmer helped create, which is the ball joint doll. And the way that they sell these dolls and put these and light the dolls and take photos of these dolls was incredibly beautiful to me and reminded me of being in art school and taking like a life drawing class, but a way more demented one.
Right. Yeah. And all the sort of conflicted psychology around something like that.
Totally. Just like staring at this thing kind of sitting there lit really beautifully. And the lighting in these photos was making, like, they had no eyes. You're supposed to buy them and put eyes and hair and clothes and makeup on them, and they become these like, your own personal version of yourself or someone who you want to be or wish you could be or whatever. And the light was shining through their eyes, which made their eyes look like they were glowing, which I also was fascinated with. So I kind of just bumped that up a little bit in the paintings. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I started doing those. And then, doing a lot of them, I feel like the amount of them is really what makes it more interesting to me. And also it's like, there's art collectors and then there's doll collectors, but why not mash the two?
Absolutely. And when it comes to something like Hans Bellmer, a typical critical analysis will say what makes Hans Bellmer interesting or challenging is that he is basically showing that this aberrant sexuality, or these like aberrant bodies against the rise of the Nazi regime. But I think the more interesting way to think about Hans Bellmer is that his work is sort of like actually giving life to a repressed perversion within Nazism. Sort of like flashing back its own sort of like perverse paranoia back at it. Your work also, or at least this series, if there's, you know, like the easy reading will be like, oh, it's this sort of freaky kink kind of vibe. But the more interesting thing in it I see is this sort of like repressed sadness and like aloneness in the psychology of the people drawn to this activity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you know, I never really yeah, I agree.
I want to backtrack a little bit just before we get more into art stuff. If I'm remembering correctly, your band was sort of like this like real rock and roll kind of vibe, right?
Yeah, like psychedelic, like rock band.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff were you into in high school and shit when you were playing all that music?
Well, I played in that band until I was like left college, even after college, but you know, I was mainly into punk music and metal music in different time periods, and you know, I also liked yeah, I mean, in high school I had a huge mohawk and like a spiky leather jacket and like listened to Chaos UK and Disorder, you know, and like anything that was just like sounded terrible and totally like distorted and was about like hating everyone or like killing your baby or something like that. I was just like into, I don't know why, but I just kind of
me too, man. When I found out what anal cunt was, I found it was like the greatest thing I'd ever heard of in my entire life.
Yeah, exactly. I would go back to high school, people would make fun of me and I would just kind of walk by them and think, yeah, but they don't know who anal cunt is, you know? And so okay. It somehow like got me through. Like I was just like, they don't have this thing that I have. And yeah, no, totally. And yeah, I mean, I remember being called down by the guidance counselor and he sat me there and he was like, so what are you? What is this exactly? Like they just were like baffled by like the whole thing. And I was like, I don't really know how to explain it, but you know, it's just yeah, I don't know. This is it.
The hardest thing about where I grew up is that I was literally the only one out of all my friends into weird stuff, like at all. So I literally felt like I had to repress like a huge part of my burgeoning identity, like my entire childhood, which I think caused me to overcompensate a little bit. Like as I entered my 20s, I was just like, oh, I'm the ultimate fucking nutbag, you know, let's do all the drugs and you know, so I don't know if that's something you identify with.
Yeah. My friends all disbanded after 8th grade. I kind of like, I feel like we were all in it together, and then by like we got into high school and they all were like, we're out, we want to get girls, and like, you know, we're not doing that anymore. And I just kind of stayed on, and like, yeah, it was kind of the lone sort of like weirdo, I guess. But
yeah,
I would find like New Jersey, and where did you grow up?
I grew up on Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know the geography of that, but in New Jersey, all the towns are really close together.
Oh,
So
Cape Cod is like Cape Cod's like a well-forested beach community. So it's like salty dog working class, and then like total wasp, like petty booge. But but yeah, it was like when the opioid epidemic was like raging. And my thing is like, I was an athlete and shit. So I was well known, but I was definitely known as like the weirder one of my friends.
Mhm.
And I did have a couple girlfriends, but this would start a trend that has followed me through life. Is I'd find girlfriends, but they'd always be like total whack jobs, or reveal themselves to be, that made my life like really difficult. So I still felt, alienated from the friends who, seemed to have stable relationships. I think Will just cut out. There he is. But yeah, like how what were your favorite bands back, like when did you get into the psych stuff?
And the psych stuff, so like one of my favorite parts about being in a band was this collaboration and how everyone was kind of listening to different music. And when people I would learn about music through hanging out with my friends, and we'd all kind of like, have this invisible pot that we'd be throwing bands into all the time and be like, well, what about this band? What about this band? And the psych stuff started coming in when I was in college. And I also got asked to be in this band at the same time. That was a hardcore, like New Jersey Shore style hardcore band called Guilt Trip, with people from this band Tear It Up.
Oh,
and
hell yeah.
yeah, so I was with like I was 19 years old, I think, playing with like a bunch of like older hardcore guys in this like really cool band. And so I was learning about, like, I'd never really knew about that side of hardcore, but kind of like learned about it through that. And then yeah, me and the liquor store guys kind of just got into psych rock by like playing all the time and like getting into like just, I don't know, we just like from like touring, I guess, and like being in a van together for a long time and like listening to just like crazy Japanese like psych rock and Hawkwind and all this stuff, and getting more and more into that.
That's the best shit. I mean, Japanese psych, like Fushitsusha, Les Réalises de Nudes.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, that's some of the best shit. So is Hawkwind. I think it was actually kind of similar to me, except maybe, I mean, I was like total metalhead when I was a kid. Like I had a subscription to Terrorizer magazine, and I liked like some of the most shutted out bands. Like I fucking loved Discordance Axis, like when I was 12.
Cool.
But when I was in high school, it was more like, Dinosaur Jr. and shit like that. In college is when I sort of backtracked and found all that. Like David Keenan in The Wire used to write about a lot of those bands. I mean, Will, have you ever read some of that shit that David Keenan used to write on his website?
No, the only Keenan stuff I know is the stuff in England's Hidden Reverse. I'm assuming I should check it out.
Right. Yeah, well, he deleted it all from the internet. But he used to do like, I don't know. I mean, he dissolved his record store and then deleted all the content. I have no idea why. But he did these like album of the weeks where he'd always just be talking about like his most far out stuff. I mean, and I have huge problems with England's Hidden Reverse, as you know.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a failure to include Death in June. But
right.
I still think, yeah. It's just like if you're talking about that stuff, there's a big four, not a big three. So it just seems kind of like a glaring error.
Right.
That a publisher would make due to cowardice.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that other than you're absolutely right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still think he's a pretty great writer. But fucking the guy from Les Réalises de Nudes, he just died like 2 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yep. And they kept it under wraps for like a year for some reason. And now I guess they're releasing an actual like official, because all their music is only available in bootlegs. but there's gonna be like
Right.
an official album release.
Nice.
Cool.
We didn't even ask this. What instrument did you play?
Drums.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's the only thing I can play.
I could know. I mean, it's almost weird that I've never been able to pick up an instrument since I've obsessed about music for so many years. But I mean, I play a little guitar, but I could never really
Cool.
like play. I
Yeah,
had
the
some
guitar's
crazy,
hard for me.
yeah. Beanstalk over here, he's like an amazing guitar player. But
Oh, cool.
Will Sampson, you play something, right?
I play guitar mainly. I can play a little bit of most things though.
Fucking A.
Yeah, once you get into guitar, it starts to like.
Yeah, it
Bring-
becomes a lot. It's pretty easy to like just find your way into like other instruments.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot more impressive than it actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So who's your favorite drummer and who's your favorite guitar player? Just as a quick interlude.
I mean, Mitch Mitchell, who played with Jimi Hendrix, is
Yeah.
definitely my all-time favorite drummer. I mean, yeah, he's so cool. And I mean, Ginger Baker, obviously, too, from Cream, is like, is great. And then, I was so into drums in middle school. I was subscribing to like Modern Drummer, and my screen name was like Modern Drummer. And I like had a drum teacher that like helped me like get into this like Guitar Center like drum competition when I was like 11. But I was really into like Dream Theater and Mike Portnoy and like all of these like prog rock guys that like had crazy huge drum sets, and I had VHS tapes of like guys wearing bike shorts just like going off on like 4 bass drums.
Right. Dream Theater fans are such a vibe for reals. It's cool. It's like I'm still a big Tool fan. And
yeah.
they have crossovers with all these other, like they got their like metal fans, they got their like alt rock fans, they got sort of their like chud mainstream fans. And then they have like Dream Theater heads like in their crowd too.
Oh yeah, totally.
So I've had
Just
some like overlap. Yeah.
Danny Carey was the drummer of Tool, right?
Yeah, he still is. I mean, I just
So good.
saw them.
So good.
Oh man, I just saw them with my wife in Jersey. It was like the best show I've ever seen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like I was just like mind blown. And Will, guitar player.
If you're gonna make me pick one, I'm gonna give a lame answer and just say Johnny Marr. I have more interesting picks, but if I had to pick one, it'd probably just be Johnny Marr.
Of all time. Cool.
Yeah. What's the guitar player from Felt's name?
From what band?
Felt.
I actually don't know. I don't know that much
Man.
about Felt's.
I thought you would know that shit. But I like how that guy plays. It's sort of Johnny Marr like, but like I don't know, it's like twangy or something. I don't know how to describe it.
Okay.
But anyway, Will, what are you working? Oh yeah. Let's talk about the book you did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Which I came to the launch of.
Yes.
Got a copy, got your signature on it. The book is in collaboration with you and the writer Charlie Fox, whose writing is definitely, I read his book and it definitely impressed me. But how'd you guys start collaborating, and like what was sort of the conceptual thesis for that project?
We started collaborating the first or second month of the lockdown in 2020. Charlie was writing his own version of a Hansel and Gretel story called Candy and Flesh, I believe. And I was asked to illustrate it. And so we kind of worked on these like sort of like Arthur Rackham like illustration versions of like through for his story. And we just kind of like hit it off, and I can't remember what the next Oh, and so through the lockdown, I was staying at my wife's childhood home, and I had set up a studio in her parents' garage, and I was just painting every day, and I was making all these paintings the same size, and they were kind of these like these paintings of like these kind of like bored stoned fairies sitting around, and like kind of like um and Grant, who does American art catalogs, came to my studio when things started opening back up again, and I had like 30 of these paintings or something, and he was like, should we do a book?
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah. And when he asked me if I wanted to have some writing with it, I have a lot of friends that are writers, and I kind of was like thinking, oh, well, maybe someone could do like a little poem or like a little like writing at the beginning. That was kind of our idea. And so the first person I thought of was Charlie. And so I asked Charlie if he would be interested in writing like a little thing at the beginning of the book. And he's like, what about like 700 words?
Right.
And what about like, what if, and then it turned into this thing where we're like, oh yeah, let's make it into, have you ever seen that Dennis Cooper book, Jerk?
Yeah. I've read all of Dennis Cooper's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, big fan. And so I was like, oh, maybe it could be like a Nail and Blake, Dennis Cooper Jerk thing
Oh
where
yeah. I have that book. The
Yeah.
collab between them.
Yeah, like it's like this like children's story, but it's like super demented, and it's not as
Right.
obviously as their book, which it's incredibly moving. But like, like Charlie, I was like, you know what, take the paintings and then do illustrate them through your writing. He was like basically writing a story based around these paintings that I made, and so he came up with this story about this weed smoking pyromaniac like goblin girl named Zoe,
Right.
who gets poked and prodded by doctors all the time because her parents don't understand her, and her boyfriend is this like satyr got like fawn and there's like a weird drugged out sex scene in his room, and then he basically like she keeps on like lighting things on fire, and eventually the big spoiler alert, she lights her parents' house on fire. And so I was absolutely in love with it, and we just basically kind of made it seem like we arranged everything so it would look like this children's storybook.
Yeah, Charlie's because the way he sort of blends all these different literary forms I mean, I feel somewhat connected to his practice in a way, especially when I was reading his book, because like I mean, my book is actually doing like similar things at times where it's like art criticism, fiction, not whatever. But I mean, there was that one story he wrote that actually really kind of fucking blew my mind because I liked it so much, which was the one where it's like the Mad Hatter and Alice, and they're getting like blitzed on drugs and talking about gummo and shit like that, I just thought that was like one of the cooler things I had read recently. But the story you guys did together is really interesting. I mean, you can read the whole thing in like 25 minutes. You can actually like reread it a bunch of times, and it sort of has this like hypnotic quality to it in the way that the pictures could be illustrations for the story, but like not directly. So there's all this like antagonism between them. I thought it was great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, they do. I mean, Charlie did. Yeah, he's such a great writer, and yeah, he really. It was really cool. He even did this. You probably heard it at the launch, but he did this spoken word for the book and put all this like music behind it and in between it, and yeah, it's really really great.
So what are you working on right now?
Well, I just had a show, and I actually just got back from Europe from the art fair, showing some kind of like more medium-sized doll drawings that I made a few months ago, and showing not at Art Basel, but like a smaller, sort of like newer art fair at this villa in Basel, and yeah, it was really cool. And so right now I've kind of just been, yeah, what am I working on right now? I'm doing these self-portraits.
Ah, excellent.
That's what I'm doing. I'm doing these self-portraits, and at the same time, like, you know, I do a tattoo almost once a day, and then for the rest of the day I paint and draw. And you know, me and Charlie, actually, the third collaboration that we did was this Magic the Gathering like faux series for the opioid crisis lookbook.
Oh yeah. I've talked to him before.
Yeah. And so we made all of these cards, and for the second issue of opioid crisis lookbook, we made, there was physical cards made, and we put them out in this book, and we actually ended up making a full set of them. So there's a lot more that haven't been released yet, and not sure when those will be released, but there'll be like a full deck of Magic the Addiction cards.
Cool. Yeah, I like that project, Opioid Crisis Lookbook. I you know, my book from last year was all about opioids.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I was trying to get it excerpted in the Opioid Crisis Lookbook, but then a new issue came out, and then the book came. It just didn't line up or whatever. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I guess there's a new one coming out soon. Not sure when, but maybe those will. We wanted to do like there's been kind of talk about doing like a Magic the Addiction tournament where people actually play with the cards. I don't know how that will actually go down, but so that's one thing that I have been working on. And then yeah, besides that, these self-portraits, and then kind of like other small, like more zoomed in faces.
Were you a Magic the Gathering guy?
You know, I never played, but I collected, and I was always like a big fan of the artwork, which I guess is what it kind of was all about at first.
Interesting. Do you play, not totally related, but slightly, do you play Elden Ring?
Dude, that was coming.
Oh, no, wait. I know what that is, but is that like is it a video game or?
Yeah, it came out a few months ago. It's
new.
Yeah, it's only a few months old, and it's already being regarded as the greatest video game of all time.
No way. Oh,
it replaced Mario something as like the greatest game of all time, like most beloved.
Oh my god.
And like GTA 5 and shit. Yeah. But it's amazing. And it's dark fantasy. That's what I was thinking. But I just beat the hardest boss in the game. I have one more to go. I'm feeling very triumphant about this shit right now.
Yeah.
It's extremely challenging. There's no difficulty setting, and it's a bizarre experience. It's like Samuel Beckett video game, just like fragments of narrative that you find. I think you would really like it.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of, and I had to be like taught how to play by a friend of mine, because when you first start, you're just getting like fucking annihilated everywhere you go. and you almost quit, but then like you learn the mechanics, and it's like, whoa, this is like the best shit I've ever done in my life. Like, I don't know if I told you this, Will, but like I've had dreams recently that were like Elden Ring images, like seeping into my dream space.
Hell yeah. That rules. I gotta check this out.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But one more question before we talk about Hideshi Hino. Are you generally feeling enthusiastic about the moments and sort of where your career relates to the larger world around you?
What do you mean exactly?
Like right now, I would say I'm pessimistic about the world I live in, but I'm actually enthusiastic about where my life is headed. And sometimes there's an antagonism between there that's interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, I think that I actually am pretty optimistic about where art is going and how we're maybe coming out of like a sort of like there was a lot of growing pains, I think, for the last few years and maybe for the next few years as well. But I don't know, but I do think that you know, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening and people are leaning towards maybe trying to do something different. And I don't know if I'm a part of that, and I don't know if I've ever felt really necessarily like a part of stuff, even though I kind of like want to be, you know, or like whatever. But like I have been feeling really excited about the like making work, you know, and I mean, I don't know. I just saw a Cronenberg movie in the theaters.
Yeah. I wrote about it.
Yeah, like I like that.
Dude, I was just gonna say, like, you know, pop culture, especially film, is usually a good way to tell where American culture is at. There's already been like 5 banger movies that I've seen this year.
Yeah.
Which to me represents something.
People want something better, I think. And it's that's how I feel. You know, there was like a lot of like not so good stuff, for better or for worse, but you know, yeah, I agree with you. There's like all of these horror movies coming out, and you know, the Cronenberg movie came out, and like Titane. I mean, for any like that any of these movies get the attention that they are, you know, is like amazing to me.
Yeah. And yeah, like Gaspar Noé's Vortex was like one of the best movies I've seen in 10 years.
I still haven't seen that. I really want to see that.
Oh yeah. I reviewed it for Compact Magazine. I think it's absolutely amazing. I think there's like a tendency of critics to act like it's like that, like there's a lot of like, oh, this one is good, but you know, mostly he's just like pretty bad. But I would argue like, no, this guy's always been like sharp as a fucking tack. Really good. And also the most like surprising thing I saw that kind of blew my mind, Will Sampson. Have I talked about Red Rocket before?
I think it might have come up before, but I don't remember distinctly. It sounds familiar though.
Yeah, it's by this guy named Sean Baker, who I usually don't like that much. So his movies are
okay.
like,
This is sounding more familiar now. Keep going now.
His previous movies are, you know, sort of like undeniably aesthetically good, but like the narratives always feel a little cheap or something. Like always like perfect, empathetic victims. But
okay.
but the new one, Red Rocket, is about this sort of like fading male porn star who's played perfectly because he seems kind of likable and imminently relatable until the point you realize this guy's like a sleazy groomer rapist pimp. You know, like it really goes dark in a way that sort of blew my mind. So many recommendations for that movie.
Yeah, I gotta check that out.
Yeah. All right, let's if you guys need to take a quick restroom break or grab some water or something, that's what I'll be doing, and then we can come back here and talk about Hideshi Hino.
Cool.
Okay. Word.
Will, where are you?
What's that?
Where are you at?
I live in Columbus. I'm currently driving down to Athens while we record this to visit some friends once we're done. And I am now pulling off into a movie theater on the way so I can use the bathroom real quick.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but you're in New York. That's what you said at the beginning, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I've been to Columbus multiple times.
Why? Why would you do that?
I've just found myself there. No, my band has played there a lot.
Okay, that makes more sense. All right.
Columbus is a city of rock and roll iconoclasts.
Well, since I'm here, it is. But I mean, beyond that, I don't know. There might be more of it.
Are you kidding me, dude? Jim Shepard, Lafner was Cleveland, right?
Yeah, that's Cleveland. Yeah.
Okay, Pink Reason was.
Pink Reason.
He was from Wisconsin, but when the band was going, it was Columbus.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So like that fried lo-fi rock, which is a great legacy of underground music for the last 30 years, very centric to your locale.
Okay. Word. This is very inconvenient since you both are back now, but I just pulled off so I can use the restroom. I will be right back. I'm really sorry about this.
All right, we can just keep going, brother. So before we get into Hideshi Hino, I guess the biggest manga news of the last few weeks is that Berserk is announced as coming back. Did you read that?
I never really. No, I know what it is, and I've talked with people about it a lot, and I tried to watch the anime.
Which one?
It's like on Netflix or something. And
oh yeah. Is that the Band of the Hawk plotline?
I don't really know. I watched a little bit of it, and it was amazing. But what would you suggest diving into to get into it?
Oh, you just got to go right to number 1 of the books and then just bang out the 400 plus series. I read the whole thing and I recently only just finished it. That shit is amazing. Like that is a truly epic, vast story that's incredibly moving. It's like, what's so nuts about Berserk is you are drawn to it for like the edgelord shit, like the demon horse with like a big rape dick and shit like that. But what becomes memorable about it is how fucking sad and tragic and also uplifting it can be. It's an astonishing feat.
So cool. The amount of times that I've, someone has been like, have you read Berserk? And just, yeah, I need to do it. It's like, it's something I know that it's like a treat that's waiting for me. But
That's it, yeah.
my question is, didn't the main person who was doing Berserk die recently?
Correct. Kentaro Miura. And that was why the news is so big. He died about a year ago. And there was like, but the story's still only 60% done. I mean, he said that in interviews. I got a ways to go. So in lieu of his death, fans were like, you have to be, and it ended, the last book was just like the most epic fucking cliffhanger they've ever done in the entire series. So if it ended there, it was interesting. Like, you could have made a case that it could have been a cool ending, just like this very interesting symbolic image. And then the other half is like, oh, fuck that. Like, no way is it over right now. But yeah, so Kentaro apparently had relayed the entire outline of his story to his best friend, this other manga guy. And his son runs the drawing studio. And they announced this week, like, we were obviously nervous to take over this legacy and disappoint people, but we realize ending the story is more important than potentially disappointing people. And I think it was a ballsy move.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even more of a reason to get it going.
But yeah. But what's cool about manga is just, well, it's like, it's so specific. Like, it's, first of all, they do things in Japanese comics that they could never do here due to censorship imperatives and like audience size. So manga ends up becoming known for just like the most fucked up, weird stuff. But it's also such like pop mass culture at the same time.
Yeah, in Japan, it's like if you're a manga writer, you're like basically royalty, isn't it?
You're like Mick Jagger.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But yeah, what got you? The main thing I know by Hideshi Hino is Panorama of Hell and then like the guinea pig films. But what got you into his work?
So I was really into trauma movies in high school, and I basically watched like all the trauma movies I could possibly watch, and I was obsessed with like finding the most disturbing movie that I could possibly watch and watching it, and someone at school in high school was like, have you ever seen the guinea pig films? And I found Flower, Flesh and Blood. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's the second one in the series. 85, I think.
Yeah, so he only did a few of them, if I'm remembering correctly. He did Mermaid in a Manhole, Flower, Flesh and Blood, and maybe The Man Who Never Dies or something. If that, and I haven't seen that one, but I've seen Mermaid in a Manhole, Flower, Flesh and Blood, and I was like instantly hooked, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and like it basically changed my life. I think, like, and it just had such a huge impact, and it's all I wanted to talk about, and I had nobody to talk about it with, because that, like, people would just be like, what are you, like, this is just too, like, just stop. And I watched Flower, Flesh and Blood a lot, and just the creativity and the eeriness and like the thoughtfulness that went into making both those movies, I was so impressed with, and still am. And you know, there's this like famous story about Charlie Sheen, who at the same time, at this time, one time was really good friends with the head of Fangoria magazine. And the guy from Fangoria would get all of the craziest movies sent to him every week, and he would send a lot of them to Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen, pile of movies, got Flower, Flesh, and Blood.
Oh
And was
man.
disturbed by it, that he sent it to like the federal government as a snuff film and got it banned.
Oh wow.
Because he was like, this is an actual snuff film. Like, this is like not okay. There's this like girl that is getting like chopped up and decapitated, and it's like horrible. And so they had to put out this making of the Flower, Flesh, and Blood, which is like just as good, if not better, than the actual movie. Where there's this one part where they show, because there's stuff. I mean, it was made in the 80s or 90s or something, and there's like parts of it where you're just like, yeah, like how did they do that? And I remember specifically they chop off this girl's arm, and it flies across the room,
Yeah.
and then it goes into rigor mortis.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah, the fingers just like curl on their own, but it's not attached to anything. And then in the making of, they show that there's like this person on the other side of the room with all these very thin strings inside this arm, and they just like pull it, and so like the fingers like, and it was just like all of it. And the guy who's doing it is wearing this like weird samurai helmet, and a few of his teeth are painted black. And I was just like, where does this, like, how do you come up with that part, like the teeth being painted black? Like, and you know, the beginning where it just is this guy filming people on the street, and you're like, I'm already in full dread, you know, like I don't even know, nothing has happened, it's just someone filming people on the street.
Yeah.
And you just know that it can't be good, and you know that you shouldn't be watching it, and you know that like, and it's just all of this like, there's this like weird sort of power to it, and you know this, and obviously then it's funny to hear about Charlie Sheen sending it like,
That's amazing.
like you gotta have this thing banned, like,
dude,
you know, nobody should.
Because you got to imagine Charlie, right? Like he's getting hit up by his Fangoria friend, and he's like jacked on heroin and cocaine, and he's like, "Send me the good shit, man.
Send me the crazy shit."
And then he sees this one movie, because we all do have a certain threshold, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like, what? This is repulsive. This girl is being fucking murdered in front of me. No.
Yeah.
Like he goes, he's like, no, like Tiger Blood style. Like this is going to the censorship board. But I totally sympathize. Like that the movie is insanely gruesome and looks way too real for comfort.
Which is why it's so like, it's just so artistic to me in this way, where like they just had to go so far in, like, you know. And like I like Hideshi Hino's mangas too, you know, like, and manga too, and it's definitely not as crazy to me as the guinea pig films, and like as potent as the guinea pig films. But they're cool. They're really inspirational nonetheless.
Well, what the novelty of the films is, because manga's filled to the gills with like the craziest, most violent, most psychosexually violent content. But the movies give those, like, they make those concepts that still seem very abstract in a comic. They like, oh, this is like happening right in front of you now.
Totally.
But I mean, manga is very influential over Japanese film, but like, it was the most vivid you could show this shit that typically only happens like in a drawing. It's like, oh my God, this girl's being fucking dismembered.
Yeah. And like, they like keep her alive. Yeah, totally. It's crazy. No, yeah, I mean, seeing it in a lot of the manga probably too, if you think about it, just wouldn't really work in movies, because it just would be like overly, I don't know, it just like it would be too much. Or maybe, I mean, you really have to figure out a way in in which to do it, which I think that they figured out this way to do it in a really like thoughtful sort of way that makes you feel like you're just watching something that you shouldn't be.
Totally.
Which some people maybe shouldn't, like Charlie Sheen, Coke, and like, you know, like going nuts. But yeah, funny enough, when I met my wife, we were talking and partying a lot, and she went to Bard, and she started showing me her senior thesis at Bard, like when she was a painting major, and I was like, this is, like, what is this? She's like, oh, I like wanted to make my own version of Flower of Flesh and Blood, and I instantly love, you know, like, it's like her and her friends like naked, like support, like just like killing each other and like taking each other apart, like in some big room. And I can only imagine that's going and seeing the senior project and being like, wow, this is what we sent you here for.
That's instant love. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, I've shown my wife like so many fucked up things, and usually it's fine, but there've been a couple that have like deeply triggered her. And we just watched this one the other night, also Japanese, called World of Kanako. And it's funny because our previous guests, Jay David and Kelby,
Voodoo Agitator.
Yeah. They just did it like the day after I watched this movie. They ended up doing a podcast on it.
The World of Kanoko.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's very twisted. It's like a twisted whodunit, but it's almost like the female character in it, this like beautiful young teenage girl who's just like totally evil and sick and like just destroys people's lives. She's almost like if a Fire Walk with Me had ended with Laura living, but becoming Bob, you know, that's kind of the vibe of it. And then, and the main character is her dad, who is this protagonist who is just awful. He's a rapist. There's nothing sympathetic about him in the lead. And that's what I love about Japanese culture, is they are really in touch with this, like, in a way that almost doesn't make sense because their culture is so sort of traditional. But the art is like totally extreme and almost like nihilistic.
Mm-hmm. And I gotta watch this movie.
Yeah, it was. Will, have you ever seen any of that shit?
No, you talking about that movie the other day in the chat with those guys was my first hearing of it, but I want to see it. I mean, that description that you gave of it being like Laura Palmer turning into Bob really makes me fucking interested.
I know. I should really be like, instead of like an avant-garde like fearmongerer, I should be like an avant-garde advertising agent.
You should.
But yeah, that was really cool though. But yeah, there's other examples of this stuff in Japanese culture, obviously. I just think, I mean, Hideshi Hino might be the most extreme. The only person that like, you know, I've had my limits tested by a couple things, sometimes in ways that I didn't even really think. The most recent example being the show Euphoria, when Zendaya is all strung out on fentanyl and shit, and she's being threatened with sex slavery. So like, you know, when something's really effective, it can like dissolve your ego in a way, and like your layers of pretentiousness sort of just like melt away, and you're really challenged by something. Hideshi Hino is the only person I think who's done that with everything he's ever made. Yeah. You know? Like he understands where it hurts or something.
Yeah, like making people feel about, like, I mean, I guess like when you go to those like thresholds, you're basically finding new emotions, which is like kind of a powerful thing. These emotions that you didn't really know that you had, or that maybe you've experienced, but you didn't. There's nothing really else that kind of like opens these receptors besides just like this art that like is so potent in film, and I think in literature and in manga, you know.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting you put it that way, and not to get all like philosophy tarred, but Foucault would say that's exactly the point of a transgression, is it sort of, once you transgress, then you've revealed the limit. So every actual transgression is a kind of revelation. So thought itself starts to complicate itself through that process. Do you find yourself as an artist interested in because all right, I'll just admit it, like I definitely like enraging people to an extent, right? Just like challenging ways of their thinking in sometimes abrupt manners. Do you find yourself interested in pushing similar buttons, not necessarily to the point where it's like brutal, like someone like Hino, but in a way where you do find it helpful in a way to engage an audience in that sort of manner?
Yeah, because I guess like, you know, something that I think about and I toy with is not trying to be provocative for the sake of being provocative. But like the things that I like in art are things that kind of like open my mind and keep me really curious about things. And that's what I also think that these really crazy violent movies can do sometimes, is they can actually give you when they like they open your mind to maybe like being able to like sympathize more in some way, if that makes any sense at all.
Absolutely.
Like you can almost like if you watch something that's so terrible, like, you know, some people would be like, why would you watch that? But you're actually like, no, but I'm kind of like learning how to like be more of a human or something in some way. And you don't have to push yourself to a limit or anything like that, but I do think that you learn more from having these like from looking at art in that way. Or like I don't always watch fucked up movies. I don't always read fucked up books. I don't always like look for these, like I think that you can find these sort of like ways in which you can open your mind through all sorts of different types of art. But I think that like I generally try to make like I guess that like the things that I like already push people's buttons in some sort of way.
Yeah.
But I don't think it pushes my buttons, and I don't think that the people that like what I like, it pushes their buttons necessarily in the same way that it might push other people's buttons. And that just seems to be the way that it is.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, when I make something, and when anyone makes something, once you put it out into the world, it's automatically like not really yours to like talk about in the way necessarily. You can talk about it all you want, and like, but with art, I think that you make something and then people will inevitably just screw it up, like with like the meaning and like what's going on, which makes it really interesting. But the people that actually get it can maybe like they just get it, you know, and I don't know where I was going with that, but
that's interesting. Yeah, I think it is interesting to an extent, because whatever you put out, it shapes perceptions. But at the same time, perceptions can often be like so divorced from who we actually are, right? It's like one of the things you have to compartmentalize when you put yourself out there in any way. But I also think what you're saying about because there's like a dichotomy in this kind of stuff. Something like Melancholy Der Angle, which is like an extremely disgusting, fucked up movie with like rape and all, murder and just nasty shit. But it's done in a way that's like raucous. It's like fun. It's almost like a comedy.
Wait, which movie?
Melancholy
Melancholy
Der
Der
Angle. Yeah, Marion Dora is the pseudonymous filmmaker.
Okay.
I got some of the DVDs if you ever want to borrow them.
Yeah.
But like, you could also, but something like Lars von Trier's Antichrist is also incredibly viscerally upsetting,
Mhm.
but in a way that's so much deeper
Mhm.
because, I mean, you're profoundly like upset about the film in some way that you don't even necessarily really understand.
Mhm.
You just know that something was said that was like very raw.
Mhm.
And I think that can always be something interesting to chase. It's like very hard to, it takes a lifetime to get to something like that. But like to say something that is like so real that you can't even really attach language to it, but everybody kind of felt what it is regardless. That's powerful shit.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's almost like I think yeah, no, that's super interesting. I think that he specifically, Lars von Trier, like is really good at putting these very like obviously upsetting things out there. And it's, I don't know, I guess like it's funny because I think that generally from what I've seen and how I feel is people don't want to be upset and they don't want to be sad. But then when you watch something or listen to something sad and you're sad, you kind of feel better. It's like listening to, like, why listen to Leonard Cohen? And like why like watch like a sad movie, or why watch like an upsetting movie? There's something that is cathartic about like, having something put in front of you like that. And I don't know, it kind of like, yeah, again, maybe like opens you up to like feeling something different.
There's that great Louis C.K. bit where he's talking about how people are so entitled that they think that they're never supposed to experience unhappiness or like something bad. So like the guy at the restaurant who the waiter spills the beer on is just like, do you know who I am? Why did this happen to me? And the waiter's like, I don't know who the fuck you are, and no one cares. Like, that's the reality. Like, we have to get in touch. We have to get in touch with the fact that shit doesn't always work out, and life is hard.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to be a person. Yeah.
I think this is a fantastic place to leave it, actually. Will, that was a really great conversation.
Yeah, dude, thanks so much for having me on and chatting.
Absolutely. So we will cut this within the week, most likely, and get it posted for you. But great talking to you, and let's stay in touch.
Please do, and enjoy your show tonight, dude.
Absolutely. Black Leather Jesus.
Yeah. Sick. Where is that?
It's at the Broadway in Bushwick, some like old school gunky edgelord Texas noise.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, bros. I'll talk to you
Have
later.
a good night. Yeah, nice to meet you, Will.
Nice to meet you, Will.